Hello and welcome to Colorado Pauper. If my voice sounds smoother, it's all thanks to Rob. Not only am
I
I
taught
trying
him.
to, you taught me how. You taught me how. I was like,
Mhm, mhm.
Rob, make me be like you. And you're like, here is a microphone.
The Yeti Blue microphone works out pretty well, especially if you have
Yeah,
two of them. So
I like it a lot. Yeah, we have Rob back on. Liked it so much that wanted it twice, I guess. I don't know. It was a
yeah.
pleasure having you the first time. And then so I thought, why not have him on a second time? And then all of our friends were like, WTF, why aren't you inviting us on? So that was a welcome surprise.
I have that effect on people.
I know. It's like they see you on there and they're like, I gotta be on that show.
It could be
Uh,
me. I could do a better job than him. Well, I'll see you try, and I'll
yeah,
make a
yeah.
lot of judgments when I do.
Exactly, exactly. But honestly, I think it's very cool. And I do want to open it up to everyone for everyone to have a little bit of a taste of it because I think it's fun talking to different people, and it's
Oh, for
fun
sure.
like sharing the experience with everybody. So, hopefully, for the third game of this week, I think I'm gonna have Alex on.
Nice.
And then we're gonna work on having Dustin and Nick on as well.
That'd
So
be
I think
awesome.
that'd be very cool. And then
Yeah.
have all the regular setup. I think that everyone I've had these things with, it's been all of them have been kind of unique, but all of them have been kind of a pleasure as well. So I want to have all
Yeah.
those people. I've not had a thing with someone yet where I'm like, never again this person. um,
That's
yeah,
pretty good. That's pretty good, I don't know, hit rate there. I mean, I think that's also one of the cool things about this that you're doing here is just that we have a lot of different voices and different people from the community coming on. It gives
yeah.
it, you get to actually see everyone instead of just the regular talking heads.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And part of what I wanted when I started this channel was to sort of just like highlight the different people that we have for Colorado Popper. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Cool. Do you want to say anything before we get started? I feel pretty okay to just dive right into it.
I think I feel pretty okay to dive right into it. So
Okay,
we're
sick.
aligned,
All
same
right.
wavelength.
Very cool. All right, so let's do a little bit of an intro here. I'm gonna start the video stream for the audience so they no longer look at our mugs and are
Mm,
starting to look at the mugs of the people playing.
I'd love
Um,
to see.
yeah, so actually what I tried this time was putting this up a little bit higher. So I think that maybe I overshot it and it's a little bit too bird's eye for this. So we'll see. We can assess at the end of the week if this was a good idea or a bad idea. Um,
Yeah, we'll have our work cut out for us, but that's okay. That's what we're here
yeah.
for.
So on the left hand side here we have Ethan, who's been on the program before, and piloting a different deck. He's kind of like a Selesnya Counters deck. He and I have actually been messaging about this because I also really like. I've like been playing around with the Counters deck as well. He
Mm,
um, had the innovation for adding in Militia Bugler to this deck, which
mm.
I think is very cool. But it's basically what it sounds like. It's chuds with 1/1 counters. They get bigger, and then you die. Um,
Isn't that just life, you know?
yeah,
Chuds with that get bigger and then you die. I feel like that's
yeah.
a good allegory.
It is an Allegor, and I think that that is his main impetus in like designing it. He was telling
Mm,
me, my other decks they were nice, but they just weren't existential enough. You know?
that's fair. Yeah,
Oh wow, okay. Um,
we're going for a ride,
yeah, right. Um, all
like
right.
life in
Well,
some
he
ways.
fixed it. He fixed it. That's good. And then on the right hand side here we have Chris. Chris actually is, I think, like number one or number two on the Brew Challenge currently, and he's
Oh
been
wow,
playing the same deck the entire time. I think he actually
oh
also took it to a tournament and did pretty well with it.
nice.
Um, it's kind of a play on Esper Affinity, but what he ended up doing is also adding in a Gates package. So it's Esper
Mm,
Gates
mhm.
Affinity. Um, and I think that it kind of works. I haven't actually seen it in action, so I'm excited to see him play it right now. But I think that one of the hallmarks of Esper Affinity is how dog shit their mana base is.
Mm,
And
mhm.
Gates kind of gets around that by letting you have a flexible mana base.
Yeah, I've actually had the displeasure or pleasure, whichever way you want to put it, from being on the opposite side of the table from this player in deck, and I thought it was pretty interesting because being able to like pump up some of your smaller creatures, even some of your larger creatures in that way with that Gates package gives you that late game inevitability that you sometimes lack in
Mm-hmm.
the like Esper traditional Esper Affinity shells, where Esper is more survivable. You're giving up that reach from the Grixis side of things to have that
Yeah.
red. So actually having this Gates package gives you a little bit more damage than you would get otherwise, and then still just drawing a ton of cards with like Cryogen Relic and things of this nature. His deck's pretty solid, I gotta say.
And you recently added 1x Ghostly Flicker, which I think you said you really
Hmm.
liked. But it
I
looks
could
like
see
he's
that being
mulliganing
really
here.
powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah, looks like
yeah,
he's on a mull to 6.
yeah. And Ethan keeping 7.
Looks like 7, and I think we're gonna see a
Oh.
Guardian of the Guild pack going to the bottom of the library here. So maybe he doesn't think he's gonna get there on like the third land drop or something of the nature, but we're off with our game. Players just both playing tap lands, passing, going,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're on this turn 2 of this Esper Gates Affinity deck.
I will say that this has not stopped the. Oh no, actually, the glare looks a little bit better. Getting a Sacred Cat here and just another gate down.
Yeah, I hope one day we'll be able to put up some filters on these lights or something of the nature, but otherwise, we're
Yeah.
here.
So this is actually Knights of One which has awful art. So the glare is actually making it look better than it normally
Much
would.
appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is a very good creature. It's like a 2/1 or 2/2 with trample, and anytime another creature gets a +1/+1 counter, it also gets a +1/+1 counter. Um,
Seems
well,
pretty powerful,
I agree.
synergistically at least.
And it looks like just pumping up the cat and going for it. I like that aggressive game plan. You don't have too much. Like I think Chris here recognizes that this is a aggro matchup, and what you need to do is just gain a lot of life.
Yeah. Also, if he doesn't have much else going on in hand
Mm-hmm.
at that point, hitting land drops and then gaining life every turn, probably not a terrible strategy. As we can see that Ethan's plan is starting to unfold here, where he's putting the counters on, starting to swing to the red zone, but you're not going to be winning that race against that life linking cat. So, yeah, I do like this
Yeah.
play of getting aggressive, and we can see a ghostly flicker in his hand as well. Maybe doesn't have some great targets for that as net just yet, but he does have
Ooh.
the ability for this to get
So
a
this
little
is a
bit
very
better.
cool interaction. This is called Smell Fear. It's a fight spell with Proliferate on it. So what he's going to do here is he's going to proliferate on the Dusk Shell, and that's going to cause the Knights to also get a +1 counter, and then it's also going to get proliferated. So he's getting 2 counters on the Knights of One Gore, and he's rumbling in here for probably like 6 or so, I think.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so pretty
That
good
seems pretty
interaction
powerful.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reading Dusk Shellcrawler here. So an O3 inherently, but it enters with a +1/+1 counter. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
these guys are large.
And in charge, yeah.
Hmm.
And just
See
entombing the.
this
Yeah.
Sacred Cat, yeah. You were saying what I was going to say here, that Sacred Cat coming back to the battlefield, entombing it, which we need to do. And I can't imagine Ethan has too many removal spells in their deck. So having this cat come back to the battlefield is still going to pose a headache. Mind you, it's not a great blocker because
Yeah.
Gates activate at sorcery speed here. So we'll see how this goes. He's holding up 3 mana, though, so he does have access to Ghostly Flicker. And was
Yeah.
that Enoch Bond again?
Yeah, it gives all creatures with +1/+1 counters um, for strike, and it looks like this is a
Yes.
Homestead Courage.
Okay. Really testing our +1/+1 counters matters knowledge here.
Yeah. Looks like he decides to put it on the Knights as opposed, really valuing the vigilance that Homestead Courage gives
Mhm.
you.
Yeah,
Ooh.
it'd be interesting, yeah, because we see that knight then get cast down, which maybe he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't necessarily expecting to be coming out. But from that standpoint, maybe splitting those counters across the creatures a little bit more and creating a bit of a wider board instead of a tall board could have been good. But again, not knowing that the removal spell is coming out, as we see a
Mm-hmm.
double pump on this Sacred Cat here, that's going to be swinging in for a pretty nice chunk here. What is that? Oh, even going down to 2.
Looks like it
Okay.
was 11. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. Okay, and Smell Fear number 2.
Okay.
And the Homestead Courage as well, taking care of the cat for good. But I
Gotcha.
mean, I think that this is where Gates sort of excels is that if you have an early lifelinker, there's not much there's not much for an aggro deck to be able to do.
Yeah. That he just gains so much life with that Sacred Cat that
Yeah.
realistically, sitting on 24 life, even through all this aggression, these big creatures coming out from Ethan,
Yeah.
I feel like he has just built so much time for himself so that he can kind of take the game whatever pace he wants here, especially knowing that Ethan's at 2. Every threat that he puts down on the board from here is going to be lethal with those Basilisk Gates. So let's see what he goes for.
A 3 mana reefer.
Okay. It's
Not
powerful, but
Yeah.
three mana is a lot.
It is a lethal attacker, notably.
Very true, even without the gate.
Yeah. Um yeah. And I think that this is where you kind of see that tension of the Gates package because I think he only has a Vault of Vespers down and no other artifacts.
I think you're right here, as we can see him actually putting a core Skyfisher on this battlefield. I have to imagine going to be bouncing the Refurbished Familiar. And if he's bouncing the Refurbished Familiar,
Well,
well,
it
he's
looks like
not going
just
to do
a
that. He's going to
vault.
bounce the Vault. Yeah,
Gonna try
interesting.
to
Okay.
triple spell, maybe? Maybe as a cast down in hand? Either
Mhm.
way, I don't know that currently on board, I don't think that there is any way for Ethan to win because he doesn't have any reachers.
Correct, correct. So with that game plan, he is pumping up his creatures, turning them sideways,
And
and
then
looks like he's
conceding.
just doing it for the sake of doing it, and yeah,
Yeah.
gives up the game.
Wow. That was a crazy game.
That was indeed. Just to see that Sacred Cat pretty much almost go the entire distance. That
Yeah.
1/1. Wow. Okay. I really that I was gonna say I really didn't expect that to happen, but I think this kind of shows that there's a lot of proficiency with this deck here,
Yeah.
understanding kind of how to take that role, and obviously has a lot of reps under his belt to play it here to know that you can get that aggressive with the Sacred Cat.
And that you need to recognizing the situation for what it is and just saying, all right, well, I just need to get into the red zone and create a buffer, and if you kill this cat, whatever, that's fine, but I will have 30 life or whatever to play with.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
Notably, Chris got ninth at our last EG 1K um, with this build. So, or I mean, like he obviously changes things constantly. I think that, as I said, he added Ghostly Flicker recently, but
Mm-hmm.
um, still the same sort of templated deck. He is very proficient at it. Um,
Yeah, and it shows up here, and I think one interesting angle to his deck as well is that if you're sitting across from it, knowing how to sideboard against this might be a little tough. I would say that the most important parts of his deck seem to be the Basilisk Gate package, but
mhm.
it's not. You need some very specific cards to be able to hate on that to begin with. But because he also has this artifact angle to it, you facing Chris here on this deck, I would be tempted to put in some artifact hate and things of this nature, which may not actually be that effective, which is kind of interesting. So it's kind of like a bait there. As we saw Ethan, I think, figuring if they wanted to put in Heritage Reclamation,
Yeah,
but I don't know if they ended up putting it in their deck. But still, it would be interesting to see kind of what sideboarding decisions
I would put
Ethan
in
has
Heritage
made.
Reclamation because it hits the cat. You assume that they probably have like prismatic strands, right?
True,
Like,
true.
and it hits the artifacts. So, and enchantments, it might run Journey to Nowhere. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, probably a safe bet there than that Heritage Reclamation.
yeah. I think that one of the ways in which non-green builds of Gates fail to impress me as much is so much of your game plan revolves around finding the Basilisk Gate. You know, like in this matchup, if he didn't just have Natty turn 3, Basilisk Gate, pump the cat, get in, like what is he doing, right? Like I think that Ethan
Sure.
actually gets the like tempo or whatever you want to call it to actually get ahead if he doesn't have that. Um,
Yeah, very true.
and all you're sort of hoping for is just Natty draw, like not drawing it naturally.
Hmm.
Um, So that I think
Yeah.
sometimes can have like a little bit of tension to it. Um, but when you do find it, it's great. That's like one of the things I found with Coggates, especially in these like aggressive matchups. You're like, I really need a Basilisk Gate and a Lifelinker, and all I
Hmm.
really have to do that for with is like Modern Age and Brainstorm, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like, although Gates is also cutting the Gatekeeper Vine package, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they just have, but they also are like replacing it with like 8 draw spells.
Yeah, you can see things like a Malevolent Rumble or something like that. Just you
Mm-hmm.
look at so many different cards, and if you're putting things that are relevant into the graveyard with something like Naya Gates, we see a lot of their cards very relevant in the graveyard. There's just more synergistic ways to go than specifically one O2 that goes and gets the gate. But
Yeah,
that being said, I think like we look at comparing something like a Brainstorm to a Malevolent Rumble, and yeah, seeing three is all well and good, but Malevolent Rumble was at seeing five. I
4.
think four. Yeah, it's still
It's
pretty
a lot. Yeah,
pretty
it's one
large
more.
amount of
Yeah,
cards. Yeah, and also getting the spawn out of the deal, just helping your game plan all around.
for sure.
But all this said, I feel like we're talking about Chris of his deck and how impressive that looked at game one. I do think that Ethan was doing the thing that his deck wanted to do, which I thought was pretty interesting, and he was putting on a lot of pressure. So despite having this huge lifelinker on the other side of the battlefield and that kind of negating his plan, I do see the power of what he's brewed up here as
Yeah.
his creatures are getting pretty big, and if Chris didn't have a cast down for his knight, then that would have been a pretty difficult position to come back from.
I agree with you. And actually, not this week, but the week prior, I played Ethan on Breathless Night, but we finished early, so we just had a practice game, and he was in the R&D phases of building this deck, and
Hmm.
it outpaced Scred by a wide margin. I was
Wow.
playing
Okay.
Izzet's Fae. Um,
Hmm.
so he like turn 4, turn 5, he had like 2/7/7s, and I was like, all right, well, I guess this, I guess I'm dead. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
not much to say here. But it looks like he's
Plus
going
one plus
down
one
to
can't.
5.
Looks like it. Okay. Well, hopefully he's kept something powerful here, as we can see at least a force and planes in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably going to be playing the game on turn two, if I'd imagine.
Yeah. Same play from Chris, just a blue white land. And oh, I love this card. Do you know this card?
No, what is this card?
It's Faithful Watchdog. It is a 0/0 Vig 2/2, but when it comes in, it gets 3/1/1 counters.
Oh wow, okay. So a 2 mana 3/3 vigilance seems very good. Also synergistically, which I think we see with Enoch Bonkin already in hand for Ethan, where he just
Yeah.
puts it down. That vigilance also goes to first strike. Seems like a pretty good card to me. Man, it's like
Yeah, I
Modern
think it's
Horizons, what, three tribal?
a little bit, yeah. Well, UB tribal, yeah. And here we see more of the affinity-esque gameplay, with a Vault of Whispers and a Cryogen Relic from Chris.
So if he has any sorts of ways to sacrifice that, can get some great value on that. Which I think his deck is more in on like the bouncing of it plan, as we see a
Oh.
duress from Chris. That's interesting.
Oh, but that's a huge duress because it
That
gets
is
the
indeed.
dust to dust.
Yeah, Dust to Dust would have killed the Cryogen Relic and at one land from Chris, and that would have been huge. Mind you, Ethan didn't have the third land, but if he draws that, that would have been pretty rough.
Yeah, I agree. He still, I think this is a bite down, which is another fight spell, but doesn't have proliferate on it. But
Okay.
imagine,
I imagine he uses it.
oh no, he just wants to develop his board here. Gets the dog out.
That makes sense. That makes sense,
Yeah,
certainly.
I find that a lot of people kind of like fall into this trap of like wanting to do the answers, but I think Ethan here recognizes that he is the beatdown, right? He is the person who needs to be attacking and really valuing that early turn damage.
Yeah, I like the play there. I think that makes a lot of sense as he's representing 8 damage on the board, so a 2 turn clock against his opponent. And looks like he attacked with a Watchdog and Chris electing not to block, so maybe
Yeah.
he has bigger plans for this medic.
Wow. And this is where you get just a value engine, just drawing so many cards here. And it looks like he drew a refurb, so gonna get one of those cards out of his hand, which is a little unfortunate, punishing developing the board a little
Yeah,
bit. Um,
yeah. Does he have the mana to play? Yeah, it looks like he has the correct mana to play Relic and Refurb this turn.
yeah, because he
He
has
has
an
a Vault of
Ancient Den and a
Whispers.
Vault of Whispers down,
Yes, yes. Okay,
so he should
passing
have
it back.
mana. Oh, what does that imply to
So,
you?
well, probably a removal spell at the very least.
Yeah, like a cast down, I would imagine.
Yeah, especially if he's looking across the table at a fight spell. I imagine having this removal spell would make sense. And okay, a Thraben Charm. That's interesting. Yeah, this is not going to work out in the sequence in which he wants it, I believe.
That's a pretty slick play. I like that. Thraben Charm obviously checking how many creatures are on the battlefield and him just killing the creature as it's on the stack to prevent some damage.
Yeah, yeah. I would have, I think, liked to see Chris maybe go for a no blocks and just take the hit here.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing how we saw that interaction go or developing the board himself. But still, yeah, taking that hit now down to 7. Ethan in a pretty tightening grip of a position here as
Yeah.
he has, again, lethal still present on board. I guess he still would need to pump up one of his creatures, but I imagine that's what his deck does best. So another Vault of Whispers here from Chris. So having critically 3 artifacts on the battlefield makes that refurb cost 1. And we see it come down here.
Ooh, a Homestead Courage, which has flashback.
Okay. That is very relevant here, to say the least.
Yeah. And here you see the more fair game plan of Chris coming out, and it it doesn't surprise me that Ethan's deck is flourishing against the more fair plan, and like kind of had struggled against the Basilisk Gate unfair plan. Right, this is the more affinity side of the deck coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised that Ethan. It feels like he has the upper hand here.
Yeah, well, Chris is building a lead here, and okay, plays another one of those knights, and then he's going to go ahead and put some +1 counters on his board.
Yep. So now he has a lot of lethal attackers. So I imagine that
Everything
here you
being
should have had
full
to
power.
block at least two of them, right? Okay, he has a cast down.
Okay, well, that makes things a lot easier. We lose first strike on our watchdogs, unfortunately,
Yeah,
but I don't know, double blocking. He could, I guess, yeah, block with a medic, block with the bird, and that's going to allow him to make a pretty decent block on this board. And knowing that Ethan has no cards in hand
yeah,
makes this feel pretty safe.
yeah, for sure. Interesting. Why doesn't the watchdog die here?
Yeah, the one watchdog should be dead for
Okay,
sure.
it is dead.
The double
Okay,
block
okay.
watchdog. Yeah, there
He
we
was
go.
still he
Yeah,
was still
losing.
factoring in the first strike, which
Yes.
obviously goes away when the creature dies.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
would say
another
that
land drop.
Ethan's still in a pretty commanding position here. You can't really attack. Um,
Yeah, I think Chris is starting to kind of turn the corner here, though. Ethan really is trying to draw off the top of his deck, and we know that
mhm.
Chris has a relic plus the core Skyfisher
That's a tithing
and
blade.
Tithing Blade. Okay, so yeah, now things are looking a little more rough for Ethan. Only has the
Yeah.
Watchdog to play off of, and realistically, this Cryogen Relic could tap. Well, I guess it
No,
can't
it
tap it
can't.
down because it only taps creatures that are already
Ooh,
tapped.
this is rough. Okay, so he just picks up the tithing blade. So he really needs a creature off the top here, but you can't even attack here. That is pretty rough. One of the things that we talked about after the game is potentially adding in some hydras into the deck
Mm, mm-hmm.
for both the reach and the pump, and it's also really good with
Good.
proliferate because one of the
Yeah,
things
and
that he said was
trample.
that and the trample, yeah, obviously trample. Sorry, that's the most relevant portion. But in specifically this scenario, it would be a little bit better to have a hydra because at least then you still have a hydra. Um,
Yeah.
if you were to tiding blade it. Um,
Yeah, so we see that Tithing Blade come down. It's gonna kill that last Watchdog, and now Chris feels like he's in the position where he needs to attack, which certainly
ooh,
I agree. And okay, we see the Guardian of the Guild pack hit the battlefield, and suddenly that is an existential threat that we need
yeah.
some very specific resources to deal with.
Well, it looks like Ethan is playing the damage lands as opposed to the gain lands, which I kind of like.
Me too.
Recognizing, yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna need to have a little bit more reach, trying to hit your opponent directly. So
yeah,
yeah, don't really get much access to that in green white, unfortunately. So get it where you can.
yeah. And I think that
Mm.
here you kind of like get a little, and it looks like he has a cast on in hand as well. So unless something crazy happens, I think that this game is pretty much over. Yeah.
Yeah, sitting pretty there. His fair game plan, yeah, he did go down to 4 life, but just having so much value off those cryogen relics and those core skyfisher bouncing that tithing blade to get that nice 2-for-1, he ended up just getting to outvalue his opponent. I mean, Ethan also mulling to 5 was pretty devastating,
Yeah.
and for me, the duress is something that if I was sitting in Chris's position, I probably would not have brought in, but
Yeah.
that's Chris knowing the deck and what he needs to look out for better than I do here. So that duress hitting crucially that dust to dusts, allowing his lands and artifacts to survive was very big game here. Because if that Cryogen relic got exiled, then he would
Hmm.
not have drawn, I think, 2 or 3 cards that game. So it would have been a pretty tough spot.
Or you could have hit double lands or just held it and hit the refurb and a creature. I agree with you though. I would also have not. I'm pausing it so that we can look at our beautiful faces again, but I would not have brought in the Duress either, thinking mostly to myself, like, this is a creature deck. It probably runs
Right.
like 10 non creature spells total.
Hmm.
But you're right. Chris recognized that the first of all, the dust to dust, it's a white, so it probably has dust to dust. And the
Hmm.
game probably comes down to that. So
Definitely.
earlier you had mentioned that you don't think that grave artifact hate would have affected this too much, but it seems like Chris does really put a high value on the artifact hate, so really wants to combat it.
Definitely. And I think what we saw there too is that the Cryogen Relic draw package is really integral to getting his deck going and churning him forward into
Hmm.
finding those Basilisk Gates. So being able to protect that. And also just if you're the Gates deck going down on lands, even if they aren't Gates, feels horrible as you're
Yeah,
really just trying to hit a land drop every turn so that you can maximize your mana and activate the Basilisk Gate when you can. But yeah, still, the it seems like both plans are very important. But it also means that it is stretching the opponent a little bit thin on what they need to bring in from a sideboarding perspective, so making things awkward. So yeah, this Esper Gates Affinity deck, I like it. It seems
yeah.
pretty cool.
Have you ever played a Gates package before?
Me personally, as a person who doesn't know how many cards Malevolent Rumble looks at, I have not.
Okay.
However, I look at this Naya Gates list and I'm like, that's what I'd probably want to be doing if I was on a Gates deck.
Yeah, I like the Naya Gates package a lot. I think that it maybe, I don't know, it's very interesting how metas move. Because obviously with the printing of Giant's Boulder, I think that
Mm-hmm.
Tron has become very relevant, and as such, I think that there's going to be more artifact hate, and there's going to be probably a little bit more land hate, which
Definitely.
hits the Basilisk Gate meta a little bit more, and then there's going to be probably more combo because Tron tends to be fairly uninteractive, which also is not
Yeah.
like it's pretty good into Naya Gates, but I think in general it's a very strongly positioned deck, I think.
Yeah, I think the Gates package is one of the most powerful things that you can be doing in Pauper just to begin with,
Yes.
just because of how the format plays. Also, we've just seen that how it can really slot into so many different strategies, the versatility of that package, and again, making like your Squadron Hawks very lethal existential threats in
Yeah.
your deck, but also, being able to, again, make something like a Sacred Cat or really literally any creature that you can bump up with a Basilisk Gate feels pretty good. And to that point, I think the Gates decks are pretty good at preying upon these grindier, like less. I want to say like more. I want to say more fair creature strategies as we kind of see here,
Hmm.
because if they don't get interacted with, they can kind of just 2-for-1 you into oblivion, which, as we saw from Ethan's perspective, again, tough to be on a mole of 5 in that last game. But realistically, I think if he had even 2 more creatures, it still would have been tough to close that game out as Chris with so many cards and really utilizing his removal spells and his creatures to kind of 2-for-1 his opponent. So this
Yeah.
seems like a pretty tough place to be if you're in Ethan's shoes. But yeah, I'd be interested to see how the meta kind of adjusts from here. I imagine we'll also see a little bit more Jund popping up as Cleansing Wildfire is good, and that deck has play against a wider range of decks here. But
I
if combo
agree.
does get more prevalent, then yeah, the meta is the meta, and it will shift as it may.
Well, that's the fun. I mean, if combo becomes more prevalent, then control will become more prevalent, and then like Tron is good into control. So it just like
Mhm.
creates that sort of like uh, Hegel's pendulum of meta shifts and stuff like that, which I think
Yes.
is always interesting to sort of to play in. It's hard to have a pet deck in, but it's interesting
Mhm.
for if you have access to a bunch of different decks, which luckily Pauper makes it like fairly easy to be in that position. Um,
Oh, for
but
sure.
one thing that I wanted to quickly highlight here is an issue that I also found with sort of like quote unquote fair um, aggro piles is that because of how outsized the role red plays in the meta, all all decks are geared towards gaining a lot of life in order to
Mhm.
combat the amount of life loss that you get from red. So it kind
Mhm.
of has this adverse effect on aggro decks, where unless you're like extremely efficient aggro deck, like elves to a certain extent, but definitely like I'm thinking rally, um, then it's or like sacrifice where you can like one shot them, it's
Right.
hard to exist in that space. And I think that we see that here with Ethan's choice. I laud him obviously for brewing this sort of like fair pile, but I do think that it suffers into the current meta that it's geared towards gaining enough life to stem away a red deck.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation on many facets there, and it's also one that like I classically think about with this slivers deck that I
Mm,
see pop up time and time again. It's like one that people love to bring out because slivers, and you there's a pretty straightforward game plan. You play your guys, they get bigger, which is
yeah.
kind of a lot of what we saw Ethan do here. But if you don't have the capacity to kind of recoup card advantage from something like a lead the stampede or like a winding way, it gets to be really, really tough when you're facing into these grindier decks that, yeah, are just gaining a lot of life. I mean, game one, we saw that Sacred Cat, which in a lot of situations I would normally question and say, like, you're really pumping up the Sacred Cat to
Turn
gain this
three.
buffer of life, yeah, on turn three instead of playing something to the board and progressing your board state. But realistically, like against Ethan, that was exactly what Chris needed to be doing, regardless of if he had other things in hand. So the
Yes.
life gain, as you were talking about, yeah, it seems like, oh, my creatures are going to be big enough that I can fight through this. But it realistically, if your opponent is gaining, 5, 6 life a turn, and your creatures, you're only presenting like 8 or 9 power, or maybe even 10 power a turn, that's still going to drastically reduce your clock just for how much life is gained. So,
I
yeah,
agree.
totally agree with you there.
Yeah. All right, well, that's about all I have to say about this matchup. Really want to see where both these decks sort of evolve in the future. Think that both of them are very cool. And though it was kind of a short game, I thought it was a good one. Not
Yeah,
everything needs to
yeah,
be a long grind. Sometimes a shorty is always good.
I agree. Isn't that just the facts of life?
Yeah. All right, I'll see you in the next one.
Okay, bye.
Bye.